Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming to our talk. So we'll be, for the next 45 minutes or so, looking at how to find your next location. So in general, we're looking at growth and opportunity within the property market. So we're both from Anytime Fitness, and we'll do a quick introduction to who we are and why we're here today, and then we'll have a quick look at the agenda and what we're going to discuss, and hopefully bring some good insights to you. So my name is Dan. I'm the head of network development for Anytime Fitness UK. So I've been with Anytime Fitness now for approaching 7 years. Been in the development team for the last 5 years. And been in the industry for about 20 years. So corporate background, working for the likes of Nuffield, David Lloyd, DW, and then been in franchising and the independent gym market for the last 7 years. And this is my colleague Kieran.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, Kieran Smith. I'm the Senior Property and Relationship Manager in Anytime Fitness UK and Ireland. Been with the brand for 3 years, like Dan, 20 years in the fitness industry, and really looking forward to speaking to you today around some property insights and the current market conditions that we're all facing.
Thank you. So before we go into the property element and the growth opportunity, I just want to tell you a little bit about Anytime Fitness, as I think there's a bit of a persona that we're this kind of big corporate beast, and I just kind of want to quash that and just kind of let you know who we are and what we're about as a brand. So in the UK, so we both work for the UK. Our master franchise is a company called SEB over in the States, where they've got 2,500 clubs. So in the UK, we operate 188 sites as we stand. We are opening one today, and we're opening another one tomorrow. So we'll be up to 190 by the end of this week. Those gyms are all independently owned. We have no corporate sites whatsoever in the UK. SEB Master Franchise do have corporate sites, circa 1,000, but in the UK, we are all independent businesses. We have just over 5,500 clubs globally, and over the last 2 years, we've opened a site every 19 and a half hours, believe it or not, across the globe. So huge part of that is our growth in Japan, where we've gone from 0 clubs in 2016 to just over 1,000 as we stand now. So they've had a huge kind of growth over in Japan. And I think we're operating now out of 42 countries. We're just about to launch into France and Norway as well. Master franchises have just gone there. So we're still on a quite a big expansion, especially into Europe. I think we've got a lot of opportunity within Europe, Asia, and the American market, North and South America, are kind of a lot more established than we are in the European market. We're the biggest franchisor in the European market by quite some distance at the moment. I think from a support office point of view, there's about kind of 35 of us that support the UK market. Various different support teams within there. So, as I said, I head up the development team. Kieran's a big part of that. So we look after anything kind of pre-opening. So new franchise inquiries, property, funding, design and construction, remodeling, resales, all sits in our department. We then have a marketing team supporting club growth, but also supporting the brand awareness. We have an operations team that are there to support with kind of compliance elements and supporting commercial growth of your businesses once they're open. We have a finance department, which at the moment are probably a bit more back of house. They support us as the brand slightly more. But we've just taken on a new data analysis, and a lot of the information that you'll see today comes from their support and just a change in direction from the brand, so we're able to make more educated decisions. And then we have a legal and compliance team, again, a bit more back of house. I think franchisees try and avoid them like the plague. So they are very much behind the scenes. So just wanted to give you kind of a bit of an insight into Anytime Fitness and just kind of really let you know who we are, because we are 190, as of tomorrow, independent gyms. We're not that big corporate beast. We don't have a huge team. We don't have a huge support office. We're there as kind of consultants to the franchisees to support with their individual growth. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to have a look at the donut effect. So I think the donut and the gym link will let you kind of make your own decision on that, and we'll cover and hopefully give you some insights into what that means. We're going to talk about making some more data-driven decisions. So a lot of what we're doing as a brand at the moment is is trying to take that emotion out of the decisions and looking at data and real kind of making more educated decisions as a brand, and hopefully those insights are going into the franchisees. We're going to talk about, and Kieran's going to talk about finding the right property and what that looks like. We're then going to talk about the negotiations and that process, and how we negotiate on a property, and what a good property negotiation, what a good property deal looks like. Because I think there's a perception it's all about the rent. It's absolutely part of it, but it's not just about the rent. There's many different things that make a good property deal. We're then going to talk about, once you found that property, how do we get funding for the project? So what does that look like for us? And then hopefully give some insights as the independent owners to how you can potentially fund your next projects and your growth. And then just following up from Sharon's session this morning, we're just going to talk a little bit about a rebranded site that we did in Swaddling Coat, and we've got a video to show you at the end to show some of that content.
So guys, talking about the donut effect, the correlation between donuts and fitness, as Dan alluded to, is one that you can think about yourselves. But in terms of coming out of the COVID-19 period, it was challenging for many businesses, but not least us in fitness. And three and a half lockdowns we had to sustain. We were the last ones to open up. So looking at really the behaviours that's driven the increase in spend into suburban locations, we are finding data to support clubs outside of that circle. If you imagine the donut, the city being the circle and the tasty bit being the suburban ring round the outside, flexible working's been something that's very prevalent now. So there's real changes in how people conduct their working week. So actually people are exercising at different times. So gyms are busiest, I'm sure, Monday evenings, and our data shows that that's still a very busy time. But actually how people are exercising really is incorporated now and encouraged by employers within their working day. Cost of living is something that's really supported the research that's come out of this, and those shifts within behaviour. And I think there's been a real drive, and the national media has really supported this around supporting local businesses. So that concentration of spend coming out of the city, where people were ordinarily working 5 days a week, out to the 15 to 20 minute commuter zones. There is a desire now for people locally to support those businesses. So we're seeing that's really propped up the performance in a number of retailers and gyms. Gentrification of suburban locations. So I feel in the past, within the property market, you're seeing residential developments pop up in towns, villages and cities. But I'm sure you'll all recognise, local to yourselves, that these residential developments now are like small villages, small towns and communities, and you're seeing schools, restaurants, pharmacies, hospitals and gyms all being now part of these residential developments and these small town communities. So potentially in the past, where corporate locations within the city was really driving a lot of business, you're seeing now that top-up is the other way round. So it's residential topped up with corporate rather than the other way round. I think that increase in spend is definitely there, as I've mentioned, and I think it's clear the challenges that lots of businesses are facing around cost of living, around increase in energy cost, increase of Bank of England interest rate from even where it is now to where it was 12 months ago. Something that hasn't shifted, which is really encouraging, is the rent levels that are being paid on commercial real estate. If anything, we've seen that go down, and units that we've negotiated on for Anytime Fitness are much more tenant-friendly deals now to what they were pre-COVID, and we're going to talk to you about the reasons why for that coming up. So looking at the high street, guys, just a little bit of audience participation if you don't mind. Can anyone shout out to me what you would go to the high street for at the moment? So if you think of your local town, your local city, if you go into your local high street, what is it for? What are you doing when you're there? Shopping, coffee. What kind of shopping, Maddie? What would you do? All of it. Great. Okay. Sound like my wife. What else? You'll have to be a bit loud because it's a big room. Hairdressers, someone said. So if you think about your behaviours on the high street now, so coffee, going to get your hair cut, going to get your nails done, meeting your friends for lunch, how does that change in your behaviours, or what's changed, say, to what you would do 10 to 15 years ago? What's different within that high street experience for you guys now? What did you used to go to the high street for? More shops and retail. What types of shops and retail? Yeah.
Well, I know I'm from the northwest, Lancaster and Penn, and I know those two since COVID. The high streets has been decimated, but now it's just charity shops and lots of food shops all in.
Yeah.
But we've lost the choice of retail, like it's narrowing down.
And that, I'm Midlands based myself, that's identical to what I'm seeing in the local towns that surround me. Does that chime with you guys? Yeah, so lots of nods. Fantastic. So those locations now, the shift in behaviour, and it's obvious when we think about it, but where you shop now, so your top shops, your new looks, people will go into the high street to make those purchases. Those retail stores were located in those high footfall areas to offer that convenience. That diversification now to your online retailers, if I think about sort of my wife at home, was Topshop's biggest fan. She'd be in there all the time, and now we're getting an order sort of through every single morning. So that shift has happened to that more of the online offering. Just because those locations are not necessarily thriving for retail, it absolutely doesn't mean that they wouldn't be amazing locations and haven't been amazing locations for gyms. So I just want to plant that seed for something we're going to talk to you about shortly.
So how everything we've discussed there, and I think you guys hit the nail on the head there. I think to summarise that, we used to be going to the banks, the post offices, these types of bits, and they're just not there anymore. As we said, it's now charity shops. A lot of the clothing shops that we go online. And I want to kind of look at how that's kind of shaped the property market, and then what are the opportunities. So I think a few other things that have changed that property market, and a huge one that definitely for us as a brand has really, really helped, is this introduction of the Class E use. So I'll just explain kind of what that means. So historically, pre-COVID, gyms and leisure facilities in general used to be classed as D2 planning permission. So if you wanted to go into what was called an A1 unit, so your Topshops, your New Looks, your Peacocks, some of these brands that are no longer on the high streets, you were kind of bottom of the pile to the landlord because you had to go through what was called a change of use. Now, a change of use with the city centre councils could be 12 weeks. It could get rejected, and in our Dalston case, took us 12 months to get planning permission to go into a site there. So you were kind of bottom of the pile. So if the landlord had another A1 user to go back into that retail shop, they generally would. And that's where it was kind of ease and convenience to the landlord, and we always ended up at the bottom. Same for some of the more industrial units. They were in B class. So what they've now done to kind of introduce leisure and hospitality as general onto the high streets, they've merged them together. So you've now got those old top shops. You've got the what used to be the more industrial units, plus the leisure units that we can go into, and they've merged it into an E. So we are now on a level pegging playing field with if a top shop wants to go back in. And we've recently had some success where landlords have terminated contracts with a New Look in a particular site in Essex for us. And we were more attractive to go on to the landlord because we weren't paying as much rent. We're not as big as brand as New Look, but what we would do is we would change the high street dynamics to bring different people to the high street. And because he had multiple properties there, it was attractive to him. him, and we were looking at a longer lease as well because of the capital required to open an Anytime Fitness or a gym in general. We were looking for a longer lease than some of these some of the retail users. It's created a lot of opportunities. I've touched on there some of those, the M&Co's. Wilco, not necessarily for us, but some of those for you who are looking for bigger sites, competing with the pure gyms and the gym groups of this world, those 10, 15, 20,000 square foot sites. There's a lot of opportunity in some of the Wilcos. And then national banks we've touched on a bit. We get offered probably a bank a week at the moment. Lots of Barclays, there's lots of NatWest, lots of HSBCs on the market. And they're difficult sites to transition into a gym because they've got safes in there, sometimes floor loading, ceiling height challenges. But what they are great at is capital contribution. There's a lot of long leases out there with the banks where they want to get out and they're happy to pay towards some of that refurbishment. So don't rule them out just because of the type of building that they are. Changing business models, and one really obvious one here up on the slide is we used to, 10, 15 years ago, going into these big Argoses that are 15, 20,000 square foot, huge amount of it behind the scenes, but big shop fronts on retail parks. They're now desks in Sainsbury's. Very, very different model, but the same product, and that's created a lot of availability for us and other brands looking to grow. As Kieran said, the recovery is different in different areas, and there's some real good deals to be had in some of the more city centre locations where that growth is slightly slower. There's some real good capital contributions, and rent hasn't quite gone back to the kind of pre-COVID days. And then the flexible working, it's definitely really changed our thought process as a brand about where we're looking and where we're kind of actively targeting. We are now very much looking at that residential area topped up by corporate, whereas previously we were able to go into corporate topped up by resi. I think the information that we're getting from some of our property partners in the Savills and CRBE and certainly from our data analysis is that we don't think people are going to go back to a 5-day in the office. We think that's done. They may go back 3 or 4 days, and we're starting to see that drip feeding in. We spend a lot of time in and out of the city, and you go in on a Monday or Friday, it's absolutely empty. You can get on any train you want. You go in on a Wednesday, and you're squashed in like a sardine, like you were kind of pre-COVID. So I think that rings true. And to protect our model and protect our independent gyms, we're very much making sure there's enough residential there to go around and that we can make our sites perform through the residential opportunity, and then the corporate is an added bonus rather than it being the other way around. So some of the bits that have helped us, different types of properties now being available. So to change that planning use, we are now going into basement spaces, we're going into retail parks, we're going into industrial units, we're going into high street units. So it's really kind of created opportunity for us as a growing brand and the gym industry in general. We're going into emerging markets. So this is, I'll use a particular site that we're working on at the moment. Has anybody heard of an area called Abbey Wood? Lots of blank looks. Exactly the same as me 12 months ago. So Abbey Wood is a suburb, so sits in this donut effect that we were just talking about. 12 months ago, Abbey Wood was marshland. And the Elizabeth line running from Reading all the way through city centre out to Abbey Wood is the last stop on the city line, or on the Elizabeth line, sorry. And it's created 20,000 new homes in a really, really short period of time. Lots of high rises, lots of young professionals, lots of the people that we want to go after as gym operators. And there's 20,000 people there that just weren't there 12 months ago, 18 months ago. And some of these, there's some suburbs. A bit of Stratford was probably one of the first to do it in most recent history, straight after the Olympics. And Abbey Wood is definitely following that process. And we kind of got in early. We were able to work with some of our agents to get into there early and kind of do a bit of an off-market deal. But it's definitely a market that we wouldn't have looked at 12, 18 months ago. But there's enough people there, and it's the right people for us to go after. National closers, we touched on the banks and the Wilcos of this world that are creating opportunity for us. Some of you that want to grow more rapidly, there are multiple deals to be done. Lots of the agents are kind of there for disposals. So as an example, CBRE were there to dispose of all the M&Co, so they were getting rid of 96 properties at the same time. They're very open to looking at multiple deals. One of the things that we actively seek is off-market deals. I think when you're looking at growth, If you can kind of get there before your competition, then you can be a bit more aggressive in your negotiations. And Kieran will talk a bit about this later on. But I think agents add huge value around those off-market deals. So what it essentially means is we get a lot of information prior to it going out to the kind of right moves of this world, the Zooplas of this world. We kind of get some of that information a month, 6 weeks in advance, which enables us to go direct to the landlord or the landlord's agent to do a deal before it even goes into the open market. You can be a bit more aggressive and you haven't got that competition there trying to bid on the premises that you want. As Kieran touched on, it's a very tenant-friendly market in a lot of areas. There are some areas where the landlords are absolutely sticking to their guns, but there are a lot of more tenant-friendly areas, certainly Zone 1, Zone 2 in the cities, tenant-friendly. And then it depends on the landlord's requirement as well. A lot of landlords now have been bitten through that COVID period and not had rent for a 2-year period, and actually now they're looking at length of term of lease. So what used to be attractive to the landlord, kind of having a high rent for a short period of time, now actually they're a bit more open to having a slightly lower rent, but they might want 10, 15 years, which certainly from our model suits our model. So there's a lot of opportunity there. Capital contributions, we're quite regularly seeing contributions into 6 figures from either landlords or exiting tenants for us to take on the property, which hugely helps towards your fit out. It's not always, but I would say probably 25-30% of our deals now will have a capital contribution either from the landlord or from the exiting tenant. One there to really focus on if you are looking at those banks or the lease of the exiting tenant is still in place, then it's a really good negotiation tool for you guys to look at to try and kind of get some of that CapCon into your early stages of your business. And then one thing that's really kind of helped us make this more data-driven approach is the 2021 census data. So it takes quite a long time for our government to feed that information, and it's just landed over the last sort of 6 to 8 weeks. So like a lot of you probably making decisions off the 2011 census with a forecast of 2015, 2018, 2019, we've now got the most up-to-date census data over the last 2 months. So it's including the likes of Abbey Woods that weren't in that 2019 forecasted data. So we can really make some more educated decisions. That's readily available through various different partners, various different sources on the internet. So before I hand back to Kieran, I'm just going to give you some stats from one of our partners, Savills, and just kind of give you a bit of an overview about the franchise network itself and the franchise market and some of the growth into these donut areas, into the suburban locations. So these are all Savills stats I'm going to read out to you now. They're not Anytime Fitness stats, but suburban locations have seen a 30% growth in spend. So as Kieran said, that tasty bit of the donut, 30% increase in spend into those locations. So we're talking, if you're thinking about a typical city, let's say London, you've got your Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3 in the city centre. Then you're going out to your likes of your Wembley. That's the type of area we're talking about now. They've seen a 30% growth in spend. They've seen a change in people. So we're seeing a lot of the people that we go after. So we're looking between that kind of 25 and 45-year-old person, and there's a lot of young professionals going in, a lot of young families going into these areas. We're seeing more spend, we're seeing more dwell time there. And I think this is a real kind of eye-opening stat. So after seeing a 15% increase in spend into suburban locations, Pret have recently announced £100 million expansion purely focusing on these donut areas that we're talking about here. And I think that shows kind of how powerful some of these locations are. Putting £100 million spend behind it really shows the opportunity there. And I think to almost kind of justify this data from Savills to ourselves, we then looked at our top performing sites to look at where they are and do they link into this? And absolutely they do. So fourth, fifth and sixth areas in the Savills data as top locations that we should be looking after, Dalston, Balham and Tooting ranking our top 5 performing sites across the UK. So there's that real strong correlation between our performance in these suburban locations to the data that Savills are providing to us.
Thanks, Dan. So just talking about now, there'll be lots of independent gym owners in the room that's thinking about upscaling, and we heard a great panel earlier of a multi-unit independent gym operator running 6 clubs. But if you run one club or you're looking to get more, really want to encourage you all to make a data-driven decision. I think it's very easy to make a decision with your heart rather than your head. And I'll reference Sharon's experience for Anytime Fitness Swaddling Coat. The club, and the data was shouted out early, was trading at less than 100 members. It was a CrossFit PT boot camp type niche offering for a relatively small town in Swaddling Coat. And what Sharon's done is really, aesthetically opened that up, has improved the product, but has made that more of a gym that feels inclusive for everybody to attend, to get that now close to 1,000 members. So it's not always what you personally like doing as a business owner. It's actually, what does this market, what is the data showing, what can we achieve? So we have worked over the last 12 months with a partner called Periscope, and we have used AI to produce lots of information and data to our franchise network. Some data is readily available. As I mentioned earlier, there are opportunities to get 7-day trials with the likes of Nimbus Maps and a few other data providers. But the things that we would strongly encourage you to do when searching for that next location is understand the size of the population. So what am I going after? The demographics of those people, so how many are young professionals, how many fit into the type of market that you want to operate in. Wealth levels and disposable income, so what price point do you think this particular area could command? Is it a hot location? Is it a strong location? So you might have the volume of people, but are they going to be able to pay the membership at the right rate that your forecast requires to get them to? Competitors. So are you want to be a mid-market type offering? Is it more of a boutique offering? Is it the higher end of the market that your club wants to operate in? What's the competitor landscape? So who else will you be competing with? What's their offering? What's the quality of their experience? We heard it earlier. Go and shop that experience. Go and look at it through the eyes of a member and really get that feel. Existing penetration, so use any data you can to know how many fitness users are penetrating that particular market. Now, often this can be done quite simply by mystery shopping the competition. I was in London yesterday and visited a gym group and just asked a member of staff, how many members have you got? And they told me they got 6,000. So you can get a really good feel from just experiencing that and looking at what that existing penetration looks like. As I mentioned, from an AI point of view, Periscope have given us that opportunity to understand from our 200,000 Anytime Fitness members that are using us in the UK, how much of that lookalike audience will sit in this new location. So you can see the map here, and you can see the oranges and the yellows. As close as we get to a red, we can very visually see on our mapping software which is a hot location and which is not. And it's driven largely within that criteria. So we want to be confident for our network that if we're going into a location, there's enough of the right type of people to be able to make your business thrive. Retail areas, so sort of anchor points. What supermarkets have you got close to your location? Basic stuff, guys, but other key footfall drivers. Have you got a Waitrose? Have you got a Sainsbury's, a Tesco superstore that are going to provide both outreach on corporate opportunities to partner with these supermarkets, but naturally people are doing their weekly shop once or twice a week, so it creates that visibility. How close in proximity would your location be to that and what's available? And then your transport hubs. Rail stations, bus networks, car parking, which is more important probably outer city than it is in the city. Those are the areas that we would strongly encourage you to have a real dive into before selecting location. Lots of people will say, well, I want to open because it's close to where I live. Again, referencing the panel earlier, Sharon lives close to Camberley. I won't give your address away, Sharon, but it's 3 hours away from Swaddling Coat. So when Sharon and I were looking at Hammersmith and Acton and central locations, Swaddling Coat probably wasn't the first thing on Sharon's mind, but the data meant that Sharon felt that was a compelling opportunity, and she's increased the performance 5 or 6-fold in less than 8 months. So use the data to support that. Once you know the location you want to go into, this can be the frustrating bit, but it can also be the really exciting bit. It's the bit that gets me out of bed every morning. I love supporting our network on finding that right property. Some location can be needle in a haystack, but as we've said, with the market opening up so much as it has, there's lots more opportunities now for us to go in and negotiate on. So, key points really to make sure that we're homing in on here. Register with your key websites, your Nova Loco, your Estates Gazette. You can register all of your requirements on the likes of LoopNet, so you can be able to get daily updates in your inbox that you're looking for a square foot of 4,000 to 8,000, your rental cap's going to be at 100,000, and you're looking for a lease that's above 5 years. You will get updates every day that gives you a really good idea of the markets that you're looking in. If you're looking at other gyms for sale, Rob will, of course, be a key point of contact to have a conversation with. But, the likes of Knightsbridge, the likes of Businesses for Sale, getting yourself out on there for conversations. I've noticed opportunities there that we've had conversations directly with owners, but more for you as the buyers. It's an important thing for you to be part of. Property alerts from Savills, CRBE, Colliers, register to all of those. You might have a week or a month where you get absolutely nothing, but all of a sudden something lands in your inbox that you think, wow, that could be a great property to be able to open my next club. Decide on your own site criteria requirements. So where would you like to go into? Have you got your heart set on a retail location because of those footfall drivers? We've noticed from lots of conversations through Rob within this network that there's a lot of warehouse gyms that can operate on better levels of rent potentially, but is that what you'd look for your next opportunity, or would it be high street? Would it be the residential development? So think within that and think about your size requirements. So if your location is highly affluent, you could operate in a 6,000 square feet when maybe in your mind you're feeling you need that big 14,000, 15,000 square foot space. Not necessarily. If the yield you can charge is higher, it's the simple maths that your ROI will be sometimes better with less members, but paying you more, less wear and tear on the equipment. So really give that some careful thought and consideration. And once you've found the property, you've identified 1 or 2 properties that you think would be really suitable for a gym, it's assessing the commercial viability, not just of the business, but of that unit. What kind of strip out is required? What's the condition of that unit? What would it do? Does it need to be taken to a core and shell? All of those things are really important because that will add capex to your project, which ultimately is going to influence the long-term health of your business if you're lending money against your particular project. Negotiations, again, the bit that I really enjoy, and I really enjoy supporting the franchise network on this. It can be the bit where, whoever blinks first, but you will always be dictated to within these negotiations of who else is at the table. Are you up against your big boys like your M&S's, your Tesco's, or have you got an off-market deal that you've got in there first? But the things that you need to do is, based on your due diligence, we need to understand what support you're going to get from a particular landlord. So if the building isn't in the best condition, how can they support you to get there? If you're going to commit £100,000 of rent a year on a 10-year term certain, that's £1 million investment from you as the business owner to that landlord. So, Mr. or Mrs. Landlord, how can you support me in getting the building to the condition that it is fit for occupation and fit for us to be able to fit it out as your independent club. In terms of the rental negotiations, how does it compare to the rest of your local market? Get a feel for that and get an understanding, because although, as Dan mentioned earlier, rent isn't the only thing. It isn't. That's your biggest fixed ongoing cost, more than likely, with your business rates and your staffing not far behind. But actually the capital required and or landlord works to get that unit to the right condition is really important. Have we got neighbours above? Do we need to acoustically protect that? Are you planning to trade 24/7? All of those things need to be considered. What's the fire risk around this building? Is there a sprinkler system that needs to be installed? Will the landlord do that? These are conversations that, from our experience, having at the front end with a landlord or a landlord's agent makes the negotiations far greater, because you can incorporate all of those capital or landlord works elements into the deal. Really, really, really important considerations. So within the incentives available, is it just a rent-free? Is it a contribution? What do we think is going to be on the table? With any gym, we're not like a classic retailer, like a restaurant or a coffee shop that can plug it in and we're getting reoccurring revenue every day. It takes that time to build your member base up. So a rent-free period of 12 months would be what we advise our network and what we would strongly encourage you guys to look for as well. Ensure that any break clauses that are inserted to leases, we would always say that you've got a tenant-only break within there. So you have the opportunity to break and not a mutual break from the landlord. You want to be able to be in a position to protect your investment. It's not cheap to open a gym, so you want to be in a situation that, as well, you're signing a lease within the Tenant Landlord Act. What that means in short is you have the protection as that occupier. We have had other business owners, and I've had conversations with business owners that have traded nurseries, that have run a very healthy business, but have a lease that's outside the Act, and at 10 years, at their term certain, they've been evicted and they can't trade their business because the landlord's looking to do development. So be acutely aware of these things, because you want that longevity within your business. And if you can't get a lease inside the Act, go for a longer lease would be what I would advise. And the final things to cover, handover of your unit, really important. I mentioned earlier, what condition are you getting that unit in? And looking at any rent reviews that you've got, and this, I've had some really interesting conversations with independent gym owners that have had significant hikes in their rent. It's important that you make considerations on open market rent reviews versus cap rent reviews. So you don't want to be in a situation where your rent review comes up in 5 years and the landlord's trying to enforce a 15, 20, 25% increase, because that could really, really damage your business. So it's just some real important considerations there. Funding the project, I'm just going to go through a couple of really important points. So once, those negotiations to the point that you can instruct legals and you can move forward with your project, it's understanding the benefits of a cash-funded project versus a bank-funded project or an asset-funded project. So understand the turnkey cost. I know that sounds like the most simple statement going, but you've got to get a handle on what is the requirement. So with any property, you want a tenant fit-out guide from the landlord to understand what's my responsibility and what costs will I incur. Understand your cash and lending requirements. So how much capital funding have you got available to inject into the project? What would a bank need to lend you? Bank funding is used usually for your project costs as your property and construction. So understanding what a 70-30 split of that would be, that's your important start point. A bank won't consider what to lend you unless you know that yourself. You've really got to get a good handle on that and have a comprehensive business plan. Asset funders usually are for your soft assets like your signage, your gym equipment and any IT and security. So those fixed assets that you've got within your site. So those are the two different type of lending that we would work with. Do your research on different funding options, so understanding things like the recovery loan scheme and eligibility. Are you eligible for that? Some really good schemes have been available, and that is one that's helped a lot of first-time franchisees that don't own homes or don't have assets, that have the opportunity to have money against the RLS scheme. As I've mentioned, ensure you have a full written business plan and get a second opinion on that as well. Really important that if you're putting any proposals forward to a bank for funding, you have that full set of information available for them to consider your application in the strongest possible way, and know your numbers. Know them inside out, back to front, to be able to stand behind your investment.
So we're going to go to, I think we've got 2 or 3 minutes left, so we're going to come to some questions. What I am going to do, because she's looking at her phone and not listening, I'm going to open up these questions to Sharon as well. So we've talked a little bit about swaddling coats. She said she was going to get me with questions, and I've just reversed it on her, so I'm going to get a kick in.
Don't tell
later.
Sharon off, Dan.
So if there's any questions for Sharon directly around the swaddling coat project, I think some of you were sat on her panel this morning, but she's lived and breathed the process that we've just talked through. Support with Anytime Fitness, but also Sharon's been in the thick of it. So if there's any questions for us around anything that we've gone through here, or for Sharon directly around the physical swaddling coat project, then Rob will come over to you.
Questions? Anybody?
Tell you what, Dan, I think we might have covered it really well if there isn't any.
Okay.
We'll hang on for a sec.
So thorough. That's what it is.
Well, I don't know, or hopefully not bored them to death, Rob. You can be the judge of that.
I missed the first half.
Success rates of your franchisees, how many are still open 3 years from now?
Go again, mate.
Great question. So we have a 97% success rate in the UK. I don't know what it is globally. I can find out for you, but 97% in the UK are still operating and open. So we have had a bit of change of strategy with our kind of latest leadership team. So we have actually shut a few this year, but through our choice to protect the brand, which is the first time we've done that. So sites that aren't probably fit to be in the brand, could be through lack of investment, could be whatever that reason is. We have shut, I think, 4 or 5 this year through our choice, but the vast majority is still open and operating. We'll be on 190 clubs as of tomorrow.
And what's the typical membership base across your portfolio?
Yeah. So average membership is about 1,200, just over. Average yield, average price is about £36. I think one thing that we have seen through kind of coming out of COVID, we've really been able to drive that yield. So to give you an idea, pre-COVID, it was £4.50 less than that. I think that's through 2 things. I think investment back into the product during that kind of period of closure, where we've gone from one model to another. So a generation 1, if you like, to a generation 2. It's much more modern. It's much more European centrified. This is an example of the new model here. So that's allowed us to drive price, but I think we've definitely seen a less price conscious consumer. So we have been able to push those. We started a pre-sale today in Gerrard's Cross at nearly 40 quid, and the headline rate's going to be 50. We would have never have done that pre-COVID. We'd have been, almost kind of a bit sort of wary to do that, but. They've sold over 370 memberships this morning at £40 already, so it's a great start, and we've just been able to push those boundaries.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Just a really quick one for me. It was really interesting listening to how the property market's changed over the last 5-10 years. Do you have any predictions of how that's going to change moving forward at all?
Yeah, I think it's been a great opportunity for us and our network to be able to say, look, you're looking in a market and you've got 3 or 4 choices when maybe it was one before. I think with the emerging markets that we talked about, particularly residentials, I think it will continue to grow. I think that's, and working with Adam at CBRE, who's our account manager, one of the directors there, certainly feels the same. We worked out of their head office last week and did a discovery day for new franchisees. So we think that there's going to be a continuation of opportunity as the high street still changes, and we expect that to go on for the next couple of years. I think then when the direction of travel will head to at that point is you're going to start to see, as I mentioned, these small, relatively small residential growing. I was in Beams Park in Dagenham last Monday. That's an incredible 8-phase development that's just going to transform Dagenham. Rugby, close to where I live, there's a Holton Village estate that a David Lloyd's gone into, which, as Dan mentioned with Abbey Wood, it was like that was just fields sort of 3 years ago. So I think that's the direction it's going to grow. As the country really grows and these opportunities grow, we're going to see more appetite for commercial within that sort of residential development, if that answers your question.
Yeah. I think the only thing that I would just add to that, I think there's going to be a lot of commercial freehold opportunity as well. I think we've got a couple of landlords that we work directly with who are seeing some very, very good deals at the moment, especially in some of the bigger residential developments. As Kieran said, the commercial is almost kind of a bit of it, let's just get rid of it. But they've got to put it in because of the current planning laws from the government. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for freehold as well. So if anybody wants to go into their own building and kind of protect themselves from that way, then I think there's going to be a growing opportunity there as well.
Got time for one more?
Thanks. Other than just membership numbers, what other key measures or metrics should a business owner consider when either scaling up their existing club or in fact moving on to a second property?
It's a brilliant question. We'll probably, all three of us could probably answer this one. So I think I can answer it from our point of view of what we look for, and I think that's probably changed over the last 2 years. I think how I would probably answer that kind of pre-COVID is very different to now. I think there's various different metrics. I think you've got to look at, so if you're an independent brand looking to franchise or grow individually, I think you've got to look at sustainability of the product. It's very different for us because we've got 5,500 clubs. We know the product works. So I think you've got to understand your product and your market and who you're going into. I think if we look at and kind of where we're placed as a brand, we kind of sit in that mid-market. That's purely from a pricing point of view. We get asked about this a lot. We were delivering a presentation on Friday and said, what makes you mid-market? And really, to be honest, it's only price, because actually the kit we put in is exactly the same as the kit that goes into David Lloyd, where they charge 150, 160, 170 pounds. So I think it's understanding your market and what that physical product looks like, and then looking at that data to see where you can physically grow, because I think the more data you look at and the more areas you understand, you're going to be making more educated decisions from that growth point of view. But I think be confident in your product, but be careful where you go, because it is about, we touched on people earlier, but it's very much about location as well. If you guys want to add to that.
Yeah, I think I'd add to that is if you're upscaling or looking to upscale, we have a great product, but it's also where are you going to go, i.e., the demographics. That's actually what I was looking at, the latest demo census data. But what are those demographics? What does it break down to? What is your competition in that area as well? Who are you competing against? Is it a leisure centre? How far are they? And I think that will help understand whether or not you move to a particular area. I think those measures are really important.
Nothing to add other than just to sort of wrap up. We're going to play a video to finish. Sharon and I had a great day the Tuesday before last, where we Cara put us behind the camera and we tried our best to talk concisely, didn't we? And I think we just about managed it, to go through the journey Sharon had to acquiring her club. It's been mentioned on the panel earlier. It was something that came through to us as a brand, and we wanted to look at where we could best place a franchisee that could really drive the success. So I won't steal the thunder on the video. We're going to play that. and we'll make this available through Rob and the Independent Gyms Network for anyone who wants to get an understanding of Sharon's journey. I'm not just saying it because she stood here. It's hugely inspirational to anyone that is thinking about a rebrand of an independent gym, a sale of an independent gym, or looking at your next location. We've turned what's quite a niche product at less than 100 members 8 to 9 months later into almost 1,000. It is huge. It is a huge inspiration by, as Dan just said in answer to that brilliant question over here, staying true and fully standing behind your product. There's never a mention of, let's knock £5 a month off. We know that we've invested in the fit out. We know we aesthetically have got a great product. We've learned our lessons on our staffing. We've brought the right people in to really shape the brand and drive that experience and product forward. Stand behind your value proposition and make sure that you can drive the right turnover, because we're now in a position that we can start to accelerate that project number 2 and beyond. So let's play it for those of you that want to see it. And just a massive thank you, guys, for listening to us this morning. Thanks to Rob for having us. He does an amazing job of the whole event. I know he can get very stressed in the days leading up to it. Not that you would notice, because he's cool as a cucumber on the day. So thanks for having us, Rob. We really appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Kieran Smith. I work as part of the franchise development team here at Anytime Fitness. We help with the onboarding of all new franchisees. The property search, club openings and pre-sale is all covered in the franchise development team.
Hi, I'm Sharon Tandy. I'm the franchisee for Anytime Fitness in Swadlincote, a club that's been open just short of a year.
So the support we give new franchisees like Sharon, when Sharon joined the brand nearly 2 years ago, now is the property search is the first initial area of importance. The key milestone on the journey for a new franchisee is supporting on securing that right unit. So a franchisee will go out and will look within their territory for opportunities.
So the property itself, which is around 7,000 square feet, it's an industrial unit, it's glass fronted, part of the unit, it's got really, really high ceilings. So actually, as you walk through the club, it has a great feeling of space, which most members actually have always commented on, now feeding back to me. It's like, it's a great space, isn't it? I'm like, yes, it is. So I think Kieran and me both saw the potential when we first came to view it and thought, actually, this could really, really work as an Anytime Fitness club. It sits on an industrial estate, but it sits a stone throw away from, a retail park, a big Sainsbury's. So in terms of pre-sale and trying to get the word out there, it's actually a really, really good positioning in terms of location. So yeah.
We had an owner that reached out via email directly to the brand. It was an email that I picked up, and really we wanted to do a bit more due diligence as a brand to understand the opportunity before presenting it to a franchisee. So a visit took place by myself before Sharon had an awareness of the opportunity, and I met the owner. The owner was very open around the reasons that he wanted to step away. He'd worked in the business for over 10 years. I'd had some diversification of his model over that period, but where it was standing at that particular point, I felt quite strongly that this could work as an Anytime Fitness. So once I'd done my due diligence and understood that, it was then around matching the franchisee to the opportunity. Sharon and I had developed a really good relationship from previous opportunities that we'd looked at together. And throughout the conversation, Sharon told me that she'd got a family member that lived close by and it would be something she would be keen to look at. So we arranged a visit. And
we started putting the project plan in place in terms of turning it around, appointing contractors to do the works that were necessary to brand it into the Anytime Fitness, and also to get the sort of key fob entry and the CCTV, the equipment. So Anytime Fitness head office helped me along that way and put me in touch with all the individuals. Life Fitness, so that my kit supplier, Jordan, it's just getting all of those people in place and understanding those timelines. So I turned it around within 3 months. So I think I closed the doors as the independent December the 5th and reopened the doors as Anytime January the 9th. So actually 4 weeks. I think that was, and I knew I was working to those timelines, and I was pushing to meet those timelines because of wanting that January, February, March surge.
The capex of a new business opening is crucial for the future profitability, and any loans against any business that's taken, you're repaying over a number of years. So the diligence that I think you've shown, Sharon, to every single detail around the opening, I think has really helped you and will help you long term. You managed to keep the pressure on, is fair to say, within that, to get the business trading 4 weeks after closing in a key trading period of the year, which is a January, because you're acutely aware that any downtime in trading could affect your member numbers. So you minimise that disruption, and I feel that's been really key for you to get off to a good start, and that growth trajectory has followed from there. There are significant savings to be made on the projects, and that's all project dependent, but you could be saving up to 2/3 of your fit out costs on a project, and this project was certainly within those region of savings. I think it's important you do thorough due diligence. It's important that you understand the market, you've got the data that we provide. You did a great job of analysing the current business. So what is the current business turning over? There are different types of sales. There can be a share purchase agreement or an asset purchase. Some rebrands will come with a member base and some won't. So I think it's important to weigh up every single aspect of that potential rebrand, from the demographics, the opportunity within that marketplace, to the current condition of the unit, as well as the feel for the current trading.
From taking on the acquisition, what I think has been my biggest achievement is turning a business around that had 76 active members and now at nearly 1,000. There is so much room to grow, so that's the future for the business in terms of potential. Again, as an individual, there's so much learning along the way, but understanding the entire sales process is the most important thing. Understanding the importance of outreach, understanding the importance of being within the community, that people see you as a gym or as a part of their community, the local community. I think that's really important, because the word of mouth, especially in smaller rural areas, carries so much weight. And I think it's important having those good Google reviews, the good reputation. All of these things matter, and really matter.
It's important to understand the current landscape of the business, but understand the growth as well. As Sharon's just mentioned, 76 active members turned into nearly 1,000 in less than a year's worth of trading. We've opened up the offering, we've put the high-end quality specification of equipment. It's a very service-led model. It's opened up opportunities for the community to be a gym that everybody feels that they can come and be part of, rather than it being niche and a particular type of offering. So to be able to transform the levels of performance to where it was to where it now is, I think should be an exciting opportunity for any franchisee to look at a rebrand.